great coffee options that's available in Starbucks is Nitro Cold Brew. Nitro Cold Brew, it's a cold coffee beverage that has a smooth texture to drink, an enjoyable tasting experience, and it's available in several options. While the cold brew itself, it's available at all Starbucks stores, but Nitro Cold Brew, it's only available at selected Starbucks stores. You can always try two other options of our Nitro Cold Brew, which is the Vanilla Sweet Cream Nitro Cold Brew or the Dark Caramel Cold Foam Nitro Cold Brew. Vanilla Sweet Cream Nitro Cold Brew, it's a very beautiful drink that has been sweetened with vanilla and top it up with our sweet cream. It's a great option for you if you like a sweetened coffee, but preferably you want to try something different than a Frappuccino itself. Vanilla Sweet Cream Nitro Cold Brew would be your choice. Another coffee option that we have under the Nitro Cold Brew would be the Dark Caramel Cold Foam Nitro Cold Brew. If you want something that is intense, this is the perfect cold brew for you. It's a Nitro Cold Brew that has been topped up with a dark caramel infused cold foam and garnish it with a coffee powder. Firstly, if you enjoy ice cold coffee, Nitro Cold Brew will be the best choice for you. The beverage is served chilled and cold and no ice is needed. As you can see, it runs from the tap itself. The beautiful cascading effect will actually add a sexy appeal into it. Thank you. Nitro Cold Brew is a great recharge, a good option to boost your energy and endurance.
Are we ready for an endemic?
Elaine, tapi sebenarnya I rasa kita kena tahu apa itu endemic dulu. Untuk lebih memahami sekiranya kita dah bersedia atau tidak untuk endemik dan bagaimana kita nak normalize hidup dengan COVID-19, kita bawakan Dr Ghows Azzam. Hi, Doc.
Hi,
How are you? We're good.
Thank you for having me in the show.
Thank you for being on.
No worries.
Doktor paling busy dalam dunia.
Not longer that busy anymore now, but yeah.
But it's good for us. At least doktor memang boleh datang show kita untuk bercerita dengan penonton malam ni tentang endemik ya.
Yeah, I'll try. Yeah, boleh kita cuba.
Okay, doktor. Sebelum kita go straight into, agaknya ramai nak tahulah sebenarnya apa tu title mana pun macam yes or no. So maybe diorang pun ingat macam it's a yes or no question kan. So before we go into that, maybe doktor boleh ceritalah, explain apa beza pandemic and endemic ni.
So pandemic basically is a disease yang spread very very rapidly, especially dia cross border punya spreading lah. That's why macam COVID-19 is basically the perfect example of a pandemic. So pandemic adalah satu disease yang memang dia spread international boundaries. So bila kita cakap kita bergerak ke arah endemic, right? Endemic ialah apabila kita dah mula boleh control the disease. Right, so endemic, kalau you tengok balik the original word of endemic, dia daripada Greek word which means in population, dalam populasi itu. So dia agak dikawal dalam populasi. Sebagai contoh endemic ialah dengue. So kita memang dah dengar dengue selama ni dekat Malaysia. It's a problem but it's not a COVID-19 pandemic punya problem. So kita boleh control. Kita macam apa, dengue pun kita selalu dengar, memang beberapa tahun lepas pun peningkatan kes dengue meningkat sikit, ada tahun dia turun, ada tahun dia naik, but kita boleh predict. So that is what we are moving into for COVID. Bukan macam pandemic macam, because also COVID is a new disease, banyak benda yang kita tak tahu pasal COVID ni. So sebab tu dia dapat satu, dia panggil the transmission level yang sangat tinggi, dia memang dia transmit sangat cepat. Tapi sekarang dengan ada vaksin, dengan kita dah faham sedikit, kita tak faham banyak lagi yang kita tak tahu lagi, tapi dengan bantuan vaksin dan juga pengetahuan kita dalam masa setahun setengah ni, kita dah boleh kontrol sikit COVID ni. Kita belum lagi berada dalam fasa endemik, but ini adalah benda yang kita target untuk pergi. Dan bukan Malaysia saja. I mean Singapore pun dah announce diorang akan beralih ke fasa endemik untuk COVID. Kita tengok Germany, Denmark, banyak negara di EU pun, walaupun mungkin mereka tak kata yang mereka ke endemik, tapi dari segi perbuatan yang mereka lakukan menunjuk bahawa kita akan ke arah endemik.
So macam mana kita nak decide perubahan ni dari pandemik ke, okay, kita dah ready for endemic, kita dah ready untuk moving towards it?
Saya rasa yang paling penting adalah kita kena lihat kadar kemasukan ke hospital. So kadar hospital satu, kadar ICU dan juga kadar kematian. Tiga ni saya rasa antara yang sangat penting untuk kita lihat untuk menentukan sama ada kita boleh ke fasa endemik. Sebab satu benda yang paling yang menjadikan COVID-19 sangat berbahaya ialah kerana dia boleh menyebabkan kematian. Dan kita lihat pada tahun lepas dan juga Malaysia sekarang pun tengah menghadapinya, iaitu kadar kematian yang agak tinggi. Kalau tengok global average, kadar kematian COVID adalah lebih kurang 2% daripada orang yang dijangkiti. Jadi kalau orang yang dijangkiti sangat tinggi, so kadar kematian juga sangat tinggi. Tapi dengan adanya vaksin sekarang, sebab tu kita boleh mula fikir untuk bergerak ke arah endemik, sebab kita punya kadar vaksinasi kita sudah sangat tinggi. Jadi kita akan melihat kadar kemasukan ke hospital akan berkurangan, tapi yang paling penting ialah kadar kemasukan ke ICU dan kadar kematian. Ya, ini kena menurun. Apabila kadar kematian dan kadar kemasukan ke ICU menurun dengan mendadak, saya rasa itulah apabila kita boleh mula fikir untuk ke fasa endemik. Tapi dia bukan berlaku sekali terus macam tu. Dia ada fasa dia gradually dipanggil, gradually towards endemik.
So what factors shape this transition?
I think the factors is as I mentioned just now, is looking at a couple of things. Among, I think, the things that they are looking at, if you look at the way the Ministry of Health is now reporting the data, it's a bit more different, right? It's no longer about the number of cases we have a day. That's one thing about endemic. Endemic means it's always going to be with us. So the cases might still be in the thousands. But if we can reduce the deaths and the ICU cases dramatically, so I think that will be one, I think, the most important indicators for us to move into an endemic stage. So we need to reduce the death now. We can have, like if you look at the UK, 10, 20,000 cases a day, but their death rates are really low. That is sort of an indicator of an endemic. That means we can control it in
Do
some
you,
ways.
Doc, do you think each country have a timeline to decide whether or not they're ready for an endemic, regardless of the numbers of deaths?
I think most countries would like to move towards endemic phase as soon as possible.
For
But
sure.
it's always depending on the situation in each country. I mean, even Singapore, they have announced going into endemic phase for quite some time, but they themselves have not moved into endemic phase officially. So even until now, they have not declared officially that they are in endemic phase, but they are moving towards that. And what also I think the preparation to move towards endemic is also very important. So we need to know how to open the economy, what to do, for example, and these are the things that even Malaysia is looking at, like increasing testing would be very important. We need for us to live with the virus. So endemic means like we are living with the virus. The virus is in our community. We know it's there. How do we control it? So one is testing. I think testing needs to be ramped up. I think this is you've seen now with the introduction of the rapid test kits and the lowering down of the prices of these rapid test kits would be important for us to move towards endemic. They need to lower it down further, and I think I've seen even in Parliament just now they mentioned that they are going to reduce the test kits even further. Hopefully there will be a subsidized test kits for the B40s, so that the B40s would not be left out, or maybe just free if the government can announce free test kits for the B40s. That would be great. That would be fantastic, because we have to test as much as possible. And then of course is what we are doing in Genome Institute, which is genomic surveillance. We need to look at how the virus mutates. So if you look at over the past 1.5 years, right, since the start of the pandemic, there have been multiple variants of viruses. And you see alpha, beta, and now mostly we have delta. We need to know, because you see how delta actually now sort of puts off a lot of people's plan. For example, like Singapore wants to go to endemic. Suddenly, delta hits the country. They have to sort of delay that transition, right? So we want to know what happened next. So that's surveillance of the virus is also very important to make sure it doesn't change, or at least if it's changing to become a new variant, we know about it very early on, and we can take the measures to sort of overcome this.
Okay, so what about kita selalu dengar pasal we have to reach herd immunity kan, and then let's not talk so much about new variant. Mungkin kita boleh sentuh sikit, so berapa persen yang kita actually perlukan for Malaysia to reach herd immunity? Because different news that I baca, they have different figures.
That's correct. So I think the current yang kita boleh lihat pada tahun lepas memang dia sebut mengenai herd immunity dan kita kena capai lebih kurang 70 ke 80% daripada populasi untuk mencapai herd immunity. Tetapi sekarang kita telah bergerak ke arah tidak menggunakan perkataan herd immunity ni atas beberapa faktor. Sebab kalau tengok pun sekarang even dalam komunikasi jarang mereka pakai perkataan herd immunity ini. Antara sebabnya adalah contohnya varian Delta. I mean that's the clear one. I mean pengiraan herd immunity ada dia punya formula dia, dan dia bergantung kepada R0, iaitu transmissibility of the virus. So kalau dulu diorang kira 70-80% tu berdasarkan Wuhan, the original strain punya transmissibility. Tapi Delta kita dah lihat sekarang dia punya kadar transmisi dia 2 kali ganda daripada Wuhan. Jadi kadar herd immunity itu pun dah
tak boleh pakai lah kiranya.
Tak boleh pakai. Jadi apa yang sangat penting adalah sekarang kita masih tahu bahawa vaksinasi masih berfungsi untuk mengurangkan kadar diorang panggil severe COVID yang teruk yang masuk ke ICU dan juga hospitalization. Itu tidak berubah. Daripada Wuhan sampai ke Delta, vaksin masih melindungi penerimanya daripada dapat severe COVID, ataupun kita akan mengurangkan kalau dah kurang orang masuk ke ICU, kurang juga orang yang akan meninggal dunia daripada COVID. Jadi yang sangat penting sekarang adalah memberi vaksin kepada seramai yang mungkin. Kita tak kira dah 80% ke 70% ke, kalau boleh kita nak capai 100%. Sebanyak yang mungkin. Kalau kita mungkin tak boleh target 100% sebab ada orang yang memang tak boleh ambil vaksin. Tapi kalau kita boleh capai 95-96%, itu sangat-sangat
Good enough, right?
Okay, so
itu sangat penting. So tak boleh pakai dah perkataan. So kita tengok pun jarang dah orang pakai perkataan herd immunity, dan negara-negara lain pun sama juga.
saya perasan juga actually doktor, after a while dah lama tak dengar herd immunity tu, itu macam, oh kenapa? Okay, mungkin patut tanya doktor balik. Tapi doktor, selagi kita tak sampai, macam doktor katakan, okay lah, ideally we want it to be at 95%, kita tengok vaccination rate kan. So apa kejadi, how does that affect Malaysia untuk sampai ke endemik tu, on top of having to deal dengan new variant, macam doktor kata, dia 2 kali ganda new variant ni, Delta variant ni.
Ya, dia cuma dia punya, kalau the new variant ialah untuk the transmissibility, tapi kita masih boleh protect. So apabila kita capai 95% tu, ramai orang dah dapat perlindungan, dan kembali kepada yang soalan yang tanya tadi tu, apa yang faktor yang boleh menyebabkan kita ke arah endemik, iaitu hospitalization, ICU dengan death cases. Vaksin dengan kadar liputan yang kalau kita boleh dapat yang sangat tinggi, akan mengurangkan kadar kematian dan kadar ICU ini. So maknanya kalau bila kita dah vaksin, kalau kita kena pun Delta variant, kalau kita dah vaksin, ada kemungkinan kita tidak akan rasa, so asymptomatic. Ataupun kalau yang ada, memang kita dapat lihat sekarang ada yang dia panggil breakthrough, mungkin you demam. Itu je. Tapi you tak masuk ke tak perlu ke hospitalization. Mungkin terdapat golongan yang tertentu yang mungkin kadar antibody dia dah berkurang, seperti orang yang berumur sebagai contoh. Ni di mana sekarang booster dose mula diperkenalkan untuk orang-orang ini. Tapi untuk saya rasa kebanyakan orang 2 dos vaksin ataupun 1 dos CanSino tu dah lebih mencukupi untuk melindungi populasi.
So even though with the new mutation, macam doktor kata, at your institute, you check how this virus mutate, as long as it's controllable. So and then there's also macam news saying yang macam this virus mutate dalam orang yang belum vaksin lagi. So sebab ni ke kita perlukan booster shot, other than the vulnerable people yang perlukan booster shot yang dah berumur, tapi untuk orang lain?
Okey, dari segi mutasi virus ini kita boleh lihat, tapi kita tak tahu sama ada dia dah stabil atau tidak. Ada kemungkinan dia akan terus bermutasi, dan kita kena buat surveillance orang untuk pastikan kita tahu apa yang terjadi terhadap virus ini. Tapi dari segi yang unvaccinated menyebabkan mutasi baru berlaku, ya, itu ada kemungkinan. Sebab tu kita perlu mendapatkan atau kita perlu convince orang-orang yang tak nak vaksin ini untuk mengambil vaksin. Sebab walaupun ada mutasi baru, so far kita lihat walaupun dengan Delta dia telah bermutasi, vaksin masih boleh memberi perlindungan yang sangat tinggi. Dan sebab tu kalau kita tengok even booster shots pun tak perlu kepada semua orang lagi. So far data menunjukkan bahawa 2 dos vaksin atau 1 dos CanSino itu cukup, kecuali orang-orang tertentu yang mungkin perlukan sedikit booster shots untuk tingkatkan lagi antibody dia. Jadi dari segi variant, so far sampai ke Delta dan juga varian-varian lain, vaksin masih berkesan. Tapi sama ada kalau virus ini mutate lagi, kita perlu lihatlah. So kita kena ikut data yang ada. So sebab tu cakap polisi yang dilakukan oleh kerajaan seharusnya mengikut data-data yang diterbitkan. So sebab tu kita kadang-kadang kita lihat benda ni berubah-ubah. Sebab data pun kita tak tahu. Kita 1 year ago we never predicted the virus to mutate to become Delta. As it is now, kan? So as we go along over the past 1 year, policy has to change to follow the science. Kita tak boleh, kadang-kadang orang cakap kenapa asyik tukar. Kita kena tukar because as we learn more about the virus, we need to adapt to it. If not, kalau kita stay dengan strategi lama, then there'll be a problem. We'll be in trouble.
Yeah. Doc, since you mentioned about the booster and it depends on certain individual, right? How do we know who needs a booster? How do you know? Like to check, maybe to go for a medical checkup or to know whether they're weak? How do we go about it? Because there's so many people.
Right. So there has been studies that have been done to look at these boosters, and so far, it depends on the data that you have. For example, if you look at the death breakthrough, for example, people who've gotten the vaccination,
Yeah.
fully vaccinated, and then they still succumb towards COVID-19. So you look at the demographic of people who actually the majority that actually succumb. So there's data for this, and not only just in Malaysia, this is the whole world. So we base on that data. So this is what they are doing. They look at the data, and then that's when they actually recommend booster shots for example, people with comorbid, because they saw that if you're the first thing that they look at, they saw a lot of these breakthroughs are people who are elderly, 60 and above. That's one thing, because the immune system is a bit lower. Maybe, and most of the time, the people who are above 60, they have some other diseases, and whether that's diabetic, hypertension, a lot of things, or heart problem. These are the most vulnerable people, and you see that vaccine death breakthrough mostly actually occurred in these people. So the 2 doses might not be high enough to protect them. So you need a booster shot. So that's how they determine. So it's not, at the current moment, it's not for everyone. So they've also announced this. They're going to focus on frontliners because they are, front facing, especially those who have comorbids. These people need to get their vaccine boosted up. The elderlies with comorbid as well is going to be prioritized because this is where a lot of the vaccine breakthrough occurred. And of course, I think they also put in one where people who is taking care of someone that's vulnerable. So the people who are working in an old folks home, for example, because although the person might not succumb to it, but in case they actually transmit the virus to other people, because there is a small study to show that the booster dose kind of reduce the transmission, but it's not certain yet. I think that the study is still very small. They suggest this because you look at the Delta variant. Again, there's a couple of studies that showed that even in vaccinated people, they can transmit the virus. The Delta variant. That is so that is the worry, right? Even if you're vaccinated, you are safe.
Boleh, yes.
But you can transmit. So kita nak, kalau boleh, they're hoping that the booster dose can at least reduce it a bit, so that will also help with transmission of the virus.
I see. But Doc, since vaccine is not mandatory, how do we find the balance of keeping everyone safe, knowing that there are still people out there who choose not to be vaccinated, regardless of it being in our own country or the world?
Yeah, that is a big problem. At least in Malaysia, I think it's better. In the US, for example, it's really, really bad because a lot of people do not want the vaccine. And that is why Malaysia's vaccine coverage is now higher than the US. Even though US started their vaccination way earlier on, and they have stockpiles of vaccine. Right? I mean, they even vaccinating animals in the zoo. That's how much vaccines they have. But they have this problem of vaccine hesitancy. They have a problem of anti-vaxxers there. Hence, they sort of startle their vaccination program. That's why they didn't manage to reach their target. And now Malaysia is higher than them in terms of coverage. But I think for the people who do not want to get vaccine, there are two. I think generally there's two. One is the really hardcore anti-vaxxers, right? This one, whatever you do, they don't want it. They even willing to pay 1,500 just to get the
digital cert tu macam-macam, doktor.
Crazy. So hopefully they'll put a stop to that. But there are a group of people who's not an anti-vaxxer, just they are a bit skeptical or they don't know enough because as an adult, you don't usually get vaccinated unless you want to go for Umrah, for example, or Hajj. But if not, you don't really get vaccinated. So people do tend to be afraid of vaccines or anything that's put inside your body. So I think education will be key. So of course, educating people depends on the demographic as well. right? So the way you educate people who lives in urban areas will be a bit different than the way you educate people in the
Rural
rural
areas.
community or orang asli, for example.
Yeah.
So for orang asli, I think one thing that they did, which was quite successful, is that they take the ketua kampung, they convince the ketua kampung to get vaccinated, and the ketua kampung becomes the sort of ambassador for vaccination in the kampung. And then you see the uptake for vaccination increase in the orang asli area. So I think it depends on the demographics. So I think this is where you need the local NGOs to come and help. You need the local people, the local champions to come and help. We're seeing, I think, if you look at Sabah, for example, the vaccination rate is quite low there. And there's the news today where also you see, I think about 10,000. I saw in the news today, people didn't come back for their second dose. So are they afraid? Maybe they got the first jab, they feel that they had a fever, they are afraid to come back for their second dose. So I hope that with education, maybe you can go find these people, talk to them, convince them that actually vaccine is very, very safe, and it protects you. It protects you, it protects your loved ones, right, from getting COVID. So and then not being mandatory is one thing. So we'll see whether, I've heard one of the interviews where YBKG sort of hinted that although it's not mandatory at the moment, it's not off the table. So if we see the big, I think he has to decide, or the ministry has to decide whether they want to make it mandatory or not. I think Indonesia made it mandatory.
Apa tu doktor? I guess in Malaysia it's not as dia kata human rights. Kita dekat Malaysia je tak sekuat kalau dekat America or UK, because people say, oh no, it's my rights. You tak boleh nak paksa I ambil vaksin kan. So how does that affect obviously kalau YB KJ decide okay, it's not off the table completely, we're going to make it compulsory untuk orang ambil vaksin, apa pula kata orang lain yang tak vaksin, kata you mana boleh paksa, itu I punya right untuk I ambil vaksin ke tak?
I think that's the yang orang selalu mainkan lah, is my right, my policy. But you also have to think about other people as well. It's because not being vaccinated is not only affecting yourself, because you can now transmit the virus quite in a quite high viral load and a longer period of time compared to vaccinated people. And you know that there are people who cannot get the vaccine. Sebagai contoh, orang yang tengah ambil treatment cancer, for example. Ada orang yang memang medically dia orang tak boleh ambil vaksin, bukan dia orang tak nak ambil vaksin. So kita kena protect, kita kena pastikan orang keliling dia ambil vaksin supaya dia boleh dilindungi lah, in a way. So sebab tu dia kata, it's your right. Yes, understand that it's your right, tapi you have to think about you're living in a community. So it's also other people's right to say, wait, I don't want to be with you, for example. So
vaccinated.
You've seen celebrities doing this in the US, right? They say, oh no, I'm not going to go see my friends who are not vaccinated.
Betul.
So that's also my right, or your right, and other people's right to say, wait, it's also my right not to interact with these people. So kita takut juga sebab tengok sebagai contoh, sekolah nak buka, ada cikgu yang tak ambil vaksin lagi. Although small number I think now compared to last time, a lot of cikgu dah ambil, tapi still small number of cikgu yang masih tak nak ambil. Yang kenapa kita tak pasti. Saya harap diorang pergi jumpa cikgu-cikgu ni, bincang dengan mereka, dan kenapa saya kena fahami kenapa mereka tak nak ambil vaksin. Kalau betul-betul mereka ada medical condition okay, saya rasa okay lah. Tapi kalau memang diorang tak nak sebab diorang kata
it's my right,
susah sikit lah. Macam contoh doktor, kalau doktor tak nak ambil pun, then would I want to go see that doctor?
Betul
kan? I think dekat Malaysia tak banyak. I think our frontliners are very, very good. Overall Malaysians I think are very, very good. Kita ingat dulu 2-3 bulan lepas semua orang bising, kenapa, where's my vaccine, vaccine? It's the other way around dekat Malaysia. Semua orang nak vaksin. So I'm very happy to see that, because kita tengok macam mana sebagai contoh masa AstraZeneca punya opening kan, orang takut blood clot. Kan we even see masa tu, because during that time I was in Mosti, kita lihat orang deregister diorang punya My Sejahtera appointment. Diorang dah register untuk vaksin, diorang deregister AstraZeneca nak masuk. So they took it out, diorang buat opt-in and then sampai crash server.
Betul.
So it's different in Malaysia. So a lot of people realize that vaccine does help everyone, and I'm very happy to see that at least Malaysians are more open to receiving the vaccine. Diorang nak vaksin, diorang faham
Apa kepentingan?
kepentingan vaksin, dan diorang faham adalah vaksin adalah selamat untuk diambil. So our resistance is very low comparatively to some countries.
Okay, doktor, before we go on a short break, apa tu mungkin doktor boleh jawab sikit lah, apa nasib, what's life going to be like untuk orang yang belum vaksin ni? Moving forward.
So moving forward, kalau yang ada medical condition, dia orang kata, I think MOH ada announce hari tu, siapa yang ada medical condition tak boleh dapat vaksin, they're gonna get something on My Sejahtera, almost like a certificate to show saying that they cannot get the vaccine, so they don't want to. Tapi yang tegak anti-vax ni, I hope their life is hard enough that they think again about it to take the vaccine, because now they say you cannot send your kids to school ke, tak boleh masuk government building ke, or even diorang punya employers can say, I want all my workers vaccinated. So if you don't want, you can find another job. I hope
they can't even enter supermarkets.
Yeah, in a way, I think it will go into like that. So basically, the supermarket owners can put in that requirement. Everyone that wants to enter my supermarket needs to show their certificate.
There
you go. Then you can have you can go. You have to go somewhere. So I hope with all of this, we don't need to make vaccination mandatory. But life is hard enough for them that they actually finally just go and take the vaccine. And then get it over with.
Okay, doktor. Okay, doktor, before kita sambung, let's take a short break. Bila kita kembali, kita akan tanya doktor on vaccine for kids bawah 12 tahun and workforce law on vaccination and a few more things. Jangan lupa, the Unity Show is brought to you by Starbucks Malaysia. We'll be right back.
Harry Leverson untuk kedudukan tingkat perak kepada kontingen negara.
Tokyo 2020, Farah N. Hadi, wakil Malaysia, Gimnas Malaysia.
Baik daripada Pandalela
yang dinantikan oleh Pensu dan juga Goling.
Baik smash yang dilakukan oleh Lee Zijia.
31 Ogos 1957. Padang Klub Selangor berhadapan bangunan Sultan Abdul Samad, bendera Union Jack diturunkan dan bendera Persekutuan Tanah Melayu dikibarkan. Bapak kemerdekaan itu memekikkan 7 kali merdeka.
Merdeka! 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 Merdeka!
Welcome back to the second half of the Unity Show. Thank you for tuning in with us. Now let's talk about vaccines for kids younger than 12 years old. It hasn't been approved, so these kids are vulnerable and potentially, able to serve as tiny viral sectors. What will happen to them, Doc?
Okay,
it's a bit boring here.
At least in Malaysia, they've announced the start of adolescence, which is 12 and above.
Yep.
So they are now getting vaccinated. So at least yang sekolah menengah tu covered. So we are talking about the one that's below 12.
Yeah.
Yes, I think a few days, Pfizer announced that their clinical trial for those below 12 is completed. So from 5 to 11. And they say it's safe. So they've announced this. It's in the news. They've announced this. They say it's safe. What they did was they used 10 micrograms of the vaccine compared to the 30 micrograms for adults. So it's a third lower doses. And then it's safe, it produces enough antibodies. So they are now submitting that data to FDA and all the regulators. And hopefully they want to get it approved. So at least for 5 to 11, the data is already there. So now what the regulators needs to do, the expert team needs to do is to look and analyze the data. So hopefully if it's good enough, if they are convinced that it is safe, and they convinced that it is efficacious, they will allow it to be administered to the kids below 12. Then you get another segment of the population covered. And on that news as well, Pfizer also said that their clinical trials for below 5 is also underway, and the results will be announced soon as well. So 5 to 11, the results are there. For the under 5, the clinical trial is ongoing, and they're saying that for the below 5, they're using even a smaller amount of the concentration of the vaccine.
Berapa lama, doktor? Kita nak tunggu at least 6 months?
I don't know. I mean, probably in the next 6 months, hopefully if FDA or the EU approves the 5 to 11, then they will then
baru yang ke bawah 5 tahun.
They will go to below. So usually the big regulators will look at it first. FDA, EU will look at it first, because Pfizer is usually like that. Once they got approval from EU and FDA, then they will submit that dossier to Malaysia. And hopefully, I hope if everything goes well, we can start vaccinating below 11 as well. For kids. So as you know, they covered. Hopefully, like you said, when school starts to open, you get this group of people who are not vaccinated. Although the cases for kids to go into ICUs is really low, really low. So they usually get just a fever and then they recover. But like you said, I mean, they can then go and meet their grandparents, they transmit the virus to the grandparents, and if the grandparents have a lower antibody, then the grandparents might get the virus. So hopefully we can get more and more of the population covered. And I'm not sure, they just say below 5. I'm not sure, so it's from the day you were born.
The day you were born.
Yeah, I mean, when now
we never know.
Someone is born, a day after they get the jab, immediately, right? So if you can do that for COVID, then you cover the whole segment of the population. Then you can reach 97, 98% coverage of the population. Then definitely we are more than ready to go into endemic.
Okay, doktor, mungkin boleh kita sentuh sikit tentang workforce law on vaccine. Ada doktor petik sikit about what YBKJ said about getting employees compulsory shots for vaccine. Sebab ikutkan boxes cannot dia orang tak pernah impose anything on current employees. Future employees may boleh lah. So dia akan present, okay, I nak you fully vaccinated. It's either you accept it or not. So for the unvaccinated employees in workforce, will there be changes in HR laws?
That one I'm not sure, because there are consequences, I mean, in terms of law. I mean, for example, if government wants to announce it as mandatory, then there needs to be a law for that. And then I don't know whether there are going to be lawsuits and this and that. So it's a massive thing if the government wants to announce mandatory vaccination. But for company policy, I think it's much easier for companies to say, look, I want everyone, it's now a new policy in the company, I want everyone to get vaccinated because we are front-facing with customers every day. For example, supermarkets, right? They can have that, and then they can force whether their employees to take the vaccine or leave. You see now, businesses are putting up saying that our employees are 100% vaccinated, right? So they don't have to say it's mandatory. And maybe the new recruits will be like, look, this is our company policy. Our company policy now, we are at 100% vaccinated. So if you want to join us,
you have to be
show
vaccinated.
this proof. So I think it's much easier for the companies to mandate. Although I'm not a lawyer, I'm just speaking on my personal view. So lawyers might know a bit more, but I think it's much easier for companies too. So smaller companies might be easier. Maybe the big companies might be a bit harder because they have certain unions, for example. I'm not sure. Again, the bigger the institution, the harder it is to change something. But I hope companies will take these mandatory vaccines towards their employees. It makes life a lot easier than trying to ask the government to make it mandatory, because the government, then you need an akta, you need to bring it to cabinet, you need to bring it to parliament, you kena bahaskan dekat parliament. It takes a long time.
Okay.
So around
Hmm.
Damn. Okay. Well, I have some friends though, Doc, who are their bosses, gave them an option. If you want to continue with us, you have to get yourself vaccinated fully. If
Yeah.
not, either potong gaji or bye bye. So
Yeah.
I think it's best that everybody just think, mindfully of the vaccine and take your vaccines. Other than what has been mentioned by our health minister, Doc, what are the safer reopening strategies for our country?
Regular testing, like I mentioned just now, that needs to be ramped up quite a lot. So I think he did mention something about a national testing policy. So we'll see what that covers. So basically, I hope they're gonna say something like, unvaccinated people, if they want to go out, they have to take a PCR test all the time.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah,
they need to be continuously tested.
Testing, yeah.
So of course, they have to pay for it. They can't go to government KKM clinics or anything to get the free COVID test, right? So they have to pay. So it's like 150 every week or something. So then if they want to be continuing to become unvaccinated, they have to test, right? Just to make sure they are not carrying the virus. I think the other thing that, to try to be safe, regular testing, that's one thing. The analysis of the data to see, where outbreaks sort of occur, because this is going to happen, right? You see suddenly, pockets of
Yeah.
outbreaks occurred here and there. So how do you then tackle it, right? Do you this is again a big policy that they have to discuss, whether they do a small scale lockdown for a few days in these places where there's this sudden outbreak, or I don't know, they have to think about that. So because this is something that's quite important, because you don't want the outbreak to spread.
Yeah, but sorry.
Sorry. So the finally a safe reopening is of course the surveillance of the virus, to make sure that we know. I mean, at the moment is Delta, but there are other variants that have emerged, like the Mu has been detected, to see whether it has arrived in Malaysia and what effect does it have towards people who are vaccinated. Are they still protected? Or I think the biggest thing is that are new variants going to emerge? We don't know. So hopefully, if it emerges, we can again contain it before it spreads out. All right, so that it doesn't actually affect the vaccination program, the reopening of economy. So that needs to happen in order for us to safely open the
Malaysia
economy.
balik lah.
Yeah.
You mentioned regular testing. So actually, berapa hari do we have to keep testing ourselves?
Well,
because in the beginning it was 14 days, and then or 1 week. But actually, what is the correct time duration to keep testing?
To be honest, if you ask me, the best thing is to test as often as possible. But of course, there is a cost measure towards it.
Yeah.
Right. There is for RT-PCR is usually longer compared to the RT case. So for people who are vaccinated, I think going forward, if you want to live with this virus, you don't need to be tested unless you really have to. And what I mean you really have to is that if you have symptoms, that's one thing. So if you have symptoms, definitely you have to be tested. For maybe certain, like going to a hospital, going to a concert, for example, maybe you just do an RTK, that should be good enough. So I think there needs to be a proper strategy on this, but I think it depends on situation. So
Yeah.
if you want to go to a stadium that is packed, so maybe an RTK would be good enough just to show that you're not having the virus. But if you are going to places that's high risk, like the hospital, maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So we want to do testing traveling, of course, like you see in Langkawi at the current moment. So luckily they put the testing mandatory before you fly to Langkawi because they detected a few people that are positive, right? They
5
send it
orang tak
back.
silap.
So if not, then you see these people will be in the aeroplane. So maybe
Yes.
before you travel, because aeroplane is a closed,
Close.
tight space with circulating air. So this is where now the discussion about airflow inside office. But like in an aeroplane, there's definitely circulating air, tight space. Definitely, I think in that case you need to be tested. So yeah, there are situations. So I think the government is to identify where you need a mandatory testing. But of course, you should galakkan. So kita kena galakkan semua orang untuk just tak apa lah. Sekali kalau you rasa demam sikit,
Buat je lah.
testing. So that you know, so that you don't go out. Especially you have symptom lah. You ada symptom sikit ke? Because you might have fever without COVID kan. I mean, kita semua kena, we have fever, we have, other viruses that can, so it might not be COVID, but it's always good to test. You ada sesama sikit, test. You ada demam sikit, you test. But it has to be cheap enough lah.
Is home kits enough though?
Yeah, I think home kits are enough at the current moment. I mean, PCR test is better because it detects low viral load. So when the virus infects you, it will multiply. So there is a certain threshold for the number of virus to be in your body for it to be detected. So RT-PCR will detect it very early on, very early infection. Whereas RTK, you need to be a higher viral load to be detected on the RTK. But it's still better than not doing a test. It's much cheaper and it's much more convenient. So I think just RTK at the current moment, they tested it. The specificity is more than 90%. The sensitivity is more than 90%. It's very, very good, to be honest. But of course, I think maybe like borders, when we open up our economy, maybe people who are traveling from overseas, just in case they bring in a new Delta variant, also a new variant, not just Delta, a new variant. So maybe those people have to do RT-PCR. So that we just don't we need that extra sensitivity and specificity that PCR can offer at the national border. But I think internally, it's fine. I think RTK is more than enough, and it's just education. You build the education that I'm going to go see my grandfather who's is probably diabetic. 80 years old. Do I want to risk? Just to be safe, I'm going to do a test. Just for me, so when you educate people to have the self-conscious, right? I know this person is high risk, very high risk. I want to see him. He's my grandfather, for example. I want to be safe. I just do the RTK kit. I'm negative. I'm more confident to go see.
This is what I tell my friends, doctor. I kata living with the virus means when we go out, we have to go out responsibly. Nak jumpa kawan ke in a group ke, let's all do the home test kit tu. Let's all be sure that kita tak ada bunuh siapa-siapa bila kita jumpa ni. And yang tu lagi penting daripada kita dok pumpa huah. Dan tengok besok macam kawan kita tu dah masuk ICU lah.
That's always the scary part, kan? You're always afraid to be the one that spreads the virus to others.
Tak apalah, tak worth it dosa nak bagi ke orang.
I think also on top of that, kan, SOPs, I think it still needs to be there. Until a certain point, we are very confident. Tapi even when we go to endemic, I think masking is still very important. Hand sanitizing, hand washing is still very important. Penjarakan is still very important. So I think the SOPs maintain, but we have a bit more freedom to go to shopping malls, to dine in, to travel, to Langkawi, and even hopefully other places will open up soon as well. But you have this SOPs.
Doktor, tapi cakap pasal SOP kan, sekarang ni kita dah tak cakap pasal government apa government kan buat. Sekarang ni it all goes back to rakyat. Kalau rakyat tak ikut SOP, tak comply, can we still declare endemic in October?
that's going to be hard. So I think going to an endemic phase means that the government puts more trust towards the rakyat. So you have to be a bit more self-conscious to follow the SOP supaya kita tak ada outbreak. Because kalau kita tak follow SOP, then you are starting to infect a lot more people, and then the death cases will increase. Then we have to go back. Hopefully not. Tapi kalau teruk sangat, then we have to go back to lockdown and everything. Hopefully we don't have to. Hopefully the vaccine is strong enough that even you get these small people who do not comply with SOP, you have another barrier, which is the vaccination barrier. So if you see like the Swiss cheese punya model, kan? So you have multiple holes. So you have multiple barriers, although each barrier has some holes. But if you have enough barriers, you stop the transmission of COVID. So that includes vaccination is one, SOP is one, masking is one, hand sanitizing is one. So kalau you miss one or two pun, you still have other. So kita ada multiple protection that kalau satu dua terlopong, kita still quite safe. So I hope by opening up the economy, opening up, for example, traveling to Langkawi, we still keep into our SOP. We still realize that we are still in a pandemic. We are still in a pandemic and the virus is still there.
Yeah.
And we want to keep ourselves safe. We want to keep everyone safe so that more and more of the economy can be open.
Yeah.
I think that's very important.
Okay, doctor. Actually, I have a question on because vaccine discrimination can be a lot of things lah. So I want to know in terms of among countries, ada some countries macam Umrah dia kata, oh sebelum ni tak accept Sinovac. Lepas tu dia terima pula. So on what basis benda ni, kenapa benda ni jadi, and on what basis dia orang boleh cakap kita orang tak terima, lepas tu okay, kita orang terima dah Sinovac. So why? Like, is it a business decision, political decision ke apa? Kenapa?
I think it's always about being safe because everyone is thinking about their own country. So sebagai contoh lah, macam Arab Saudi, mereka pakai mostly Pfizer, I think, and AstraZeneca. So pada awalnya masa mereka announce yang mereka hanya akan terima Pfizer, AstraZeneca sebab that is what they are using. But after a while they realize, wait, there's other vaccines, there's a lot more vaccines, kan, ada Sinovac, ada Sinopharm, ada CanSino, ada Johnson, Moderna. And then banyak negara lain yang pakai juga vaksin-vaksin ni, dan kalau mereka lihat so diorang akan mula dengan benda yang diorang biasa, iaitu vaksin yang mereka pakai. So diorang akan mula dengan tu sebab diorang tahu mereka dah kaji data-data kepada vaksin-vaksin yang mereka pakai, tapi diorang tak kaji lagi data-data daripada vaksin lain. So mungkin lepas tu diorang fikir, oh okay, kita sepatutnya lihat vaksin-vaksin lain, terutama vaksin-vaksin yang telah diluluskan oleh WHO macam Sinovac. WHO dah luluskan. So I think that helps as well for countries like Saudi to allow Sinovac to be accepted, tapi cuma dia letak clause, siapa yang dapat vaksin daripada China kena dapat booster dose.
Right, yes.
AstraZeneca atau Pfizer. So I think that one is not a big problem. I think the government has enough doses to bagi booster dose Pfizer kalau they have to go to. Even last time pun, I think they started, they announce masa Saudi bagi tahu hanya AstraZeneca dan Pfizer, masa tu kerajaan dah bagi Pfizer kepada orang-orang yang akan ke haji. Tapi tak jadi, kan, dia orang cancel haji. And then they come up with a new regulation. So ini adalah dia orang panggil macam vaccine passport lah. It's like vaccine passport. There are few countries yang dah mula announce vaccine passport. EU is one of them. UK yang baru-baru ni announce mereka terima Pfizer, AstraZeneca daripada Malaysia. Dia specific tulis
Malaysia.
Which is good because that means they recognize our vaccination plan. Cuma Sinovac was not in there. And also because diorang tak pakai juga Sinovac. So hopefully after a while they'll go like what macam mana Saudi buat lah. Mereka akan lihat, oh actually vaksin-vaksin, especially the vaccine yang dah approved by WHO. And they should allow it because tak semua negara pakai the same vaccine, because I mean vaccines are scarce. Everyone is trying to grab vaccines.
Whatever they can.
Whatever they can. So if it's a Chinese vaccine that's available, they take the Chinese vaccine because they cannot wait until next year to
get
wait for Pfizer, for example, kan. So I think it's still the vaccine passport has not matured. It's still very dia panggil infant, baru je nak mula. So of course masa
Yeah.
dia baru nak mula, dia orang akan terima mereka punya vaksin, dan hopefully after a while as it matures, mereka akan faham bahawa kita tak boleh lah nak pakai hanya you have this vaccine
Discrimination ni. Yeah.
discrimination on vaccine brand. Bukannya kita tak nak vaksin. Unless kalau you cakap if you're not vaccine you cannot come in, okay, that's okay lah. But you cannot discriminate because most countries they cannot choose what vaccine brand they want. Macam kita pun we negotiate with Pfizer, we negotiated with Sinovac, we negotiated with AstraZeneca, and if we wanted to wait for Pfizer only, we might not get the coverage that we need to get to now. Kan? And then of course some people prefer Sinovac. Not everyone can take Pfizer because some people are allergic to the Pfizer vaccine. They have the anaphylaxis, so they have to take the Sinovac. So hopefully going forward, there will be more openness towards a vaccine brand as long as it's recognized by someone. I'm saying the best will be the one that's recognized by WHO. I think that's the easiest. It's an International World Health Organization. Kan? It's an independent body that recognizes and look into the data for all the vaccines. And then people just senang pakai just that recognition. I think Singapore is also moving towards that as well. So hopefully we'll see. Of course, there is the nationality punya issue juga lah, because China, for example, they want to recognize more of their own vaccine, and of course the EU, because they produce Pfizer and AstraZeneca, they want nak recognize the US as well. But moving forward, we'll see lah. It will be better. Trust me, it will be better.
Doc, last question: how do we continue to spread the message, the importance of endemic?
I think. Education is key. First of all, people need to understand what is an endemic, and why do we want to move into an endemic stage, and what we need to do. So endemic is just basically a term, right? We use basically what affects the people is the opening of the economy. Small business owners, people working in the tourism centers. They don't really care what terminology you use, as long as they can start opening up their shops, they get customers coming in. So I mean, as a bigger picture is, we want it to become not just stopping an endemic. If possible, we just don't care about it anymore. That would be even better, right? I mean, like polio last time. Polio was a pandemic, and then when you get the vaccine, and now it's eradicated. You don't see polio anymore. So I'm not sure whether we will reach that point with COVID. We might not, or we might. I'm not sure. We have to see whether the second generation vaccines and how the virus mutates. But at least going forward slowly, now we're moving to endemic. People need to realize that there's going to be more freedom for people to move around, but you need to be a bit more self-conscious. We cannot go back to the normal in 2018, for example. I think at the current moment, we have a new normal, which is a bit more freedom, but with SOPs still intact. But you can still, go on with your daily life. You can go see your parents who are in different states. You can go hang out with your friends in Kedai Mama, vaccinated. You can have a nice meal with your spouse in a nice restaurant, right? You can celebrate anniversaries again. You can celebrate birthdays, but maybe you don't blow on the candle. Now we realize that how
kipas.
How actually disgusting that is. So,
only now we think about it. It's disgusting,
So I think this is the new normal, right? So you can celebrate birthdays, you can have friends and families, but don't blow on the candle. We learned. So take the good things about what you have learned in the pandemic, hygiene especially, and move forward. Continue. Don't forget about this, because it's not just COVID. You have thousands of other viruses and bacteria, and we might have a next pandemic. I don't know when. I mean, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. We don't know, right? So having this in place, ingrained in your sort of everyday life, so that you don't have to think about it. I think now we don't have to think about it anymore. Last time when the pandemic starts, every time I go to supermarket, I forgot my mask, so I have to buy a mask.
Mm.
I don't think I've ever forgotten a mask now.
Yeah.
It's automatic. I want to go out, I'll take a mask, I'll wear it, and I'll go out. So
Yeah.
it has been
Betul.
ingrained. So I hope, that stays. Whether we get rid of the mask anytime soon, I don't think so. We're going to look at what happened in the UK, in the US when they started. I think US is going back to masking.
Yeah.
But in Europe and UK, they kind of allow people not to wear masks. We'll see. I mean, if it's successful there, I think it'll be great to then we can adopt it here. But I think at the current moment, Malaysian cases is very high.
Maybe not
right?
yet.
Yeah, not yet. We are not there yet. Although our vaccination rate is very high, but we are not there yet. So hopefully, in a few months, we'll see. It will be ever changing. So the policies will also move towards the data. I think this is a lot of people need to understand. Why do policies change from one time to another? Because as we know more about how the virus behaves, how the virus reacts, the virus is constantly evolving to survive.
Yeah.
We are also constantly evolving to survive. So it's a question of who wins at the end. So far, we have actually ended even pandemics before. I mean, the Spanish flu that killed 50 million, or I mean, a lot of people last time. We still survive, and now we don't think about the flu anymore. I mean, we have the flu jabs every year, but we don't have to think hard about it. So give it some time. Continue with the SOP. For those who have not gotten their vaccine, please. There's a lot of PPVs that allow walk-ins now. Just go walk in, get your vaccine, and then you can forget about it. You don't have to think about, my friends don't want to see me, or I have to get tested every week. This and that.
Doctor, or I might kill someone.
Or you might kill someone, right? I mean, that's very possible. Because you spread the virus, right? You don't want to be the person who was
bunuh orang tak pasal-pasal
of this spread. You don't want to be the I'm happy to see a lot of frontliners now going to social media saying that, the ICU beds are now empty. We don't have to, stay up long nights anymore. We can actually now go home and rest a bit. I mean, it's a big relief to them, but we are not out of it yet. But you can see the frontliners are very tired. So we also have to do our part to help them to get back to their normal life, which is treating other diseases as well, not just COVID. At the moment, everything is just COVID. Other surgeries and everything else are being delayed. They want to go back to, treat everyone again. And, I think
Thank you so much for the explanation, Doctor.
And also thank you for coming on to educate us and our viewers. I hope this segment can convince the unvaccinated to get their vaccine shots. And to the Rakyat of Malaysia, you heard what Doctor said. We need everyone to comply to the SOP to make this work. We have to work together. So stay safe and embrace the new norm. Don't forget, the Unity Show is brought to you by Starbucks Malaysia. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you.
Segmen dengan Dr. Ghows tadi tak convincing enough for the people out there to take your vaccine, untuk jaga SOP, untuk bekerjasama. Tak tahulah nak cakap apa.
An explanation was easy to understand. I hope people will change their mind. Please get your vaccines.
Jangan jadi macam kawan Ilin yang nak pinjam Ilin pergi masuk shopping mall.
Abang.
Tak boleh sebut. Okay, summary untuk malam ni tak panjang sangat. We invited Dr. Ghows on the show to learn about endemic, kenapa pentingnya endemic, and what it takes for us to help the country to move towards endemic. Untuk menonton semula episod malam ini, head over to our Facebook and YouTube channel kami.
Sorry, I'm still thinking about what you said. We will see you again next week, guys. Same time, same place. Good night.